Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Redaway. I am a student at Tiffin University, and this is my Reflections of Artifacts presentation. Now, each of my artifacts I selected for a unique reason, and one note is that you won't see anything from year 4 because I'm finishing up here inside of year 3. So there's still 10 assignments, still 10 artifacts, but it's just not, it doesn't involve there's no year 4 because I hopefully will be moving on and not having to deal with a year 4. So, all right, let's get started. So this first artifact was my personal mission statement. I selected this artifact because it felt like it was very important for me to highlight some of my heroes and people that I looked up to, and try to, I also like to be different. So I try to pick things that either topics or things that interest me when it goes to selecting people who I look up to. So I'm a big sports guy and I love to box. I love to do martial arts. So Muhammad Ali was one of my first selections. John McCain was another because I do feel like politics are it's a necessary evil. Whether you want to pay attention to politics or not, reality is politics is a big part of our lives as Americans, and so it's a good idea to know about the late great Senator McCain. I didn't always agree with his politics or his policies, but he was an honorable man, and you can't. And as a veteran, I'm always going to have a preference towards my fellow veterans. So got a lot of love for him, and that's why I selected him. Finally, Dr. Ben Carson. I'm real big into healthcare, and I'm real interested in the topics of healthcare and picking one of the greatest minds that the world has ever seen, one of the great neurosurgeons of all time, Dr. Ben Carson. I believe that, and his message was also something that really stuck to me about how important it is a job to be a good parent. And while I don't have any kids of my own, I had great parents, and my dad is still with me. My mom, unfortunately, is not. I also was lucky enough to see not so good parents around in my surroundings and places that I grown up. So it taught me a lot about what I didn't want to do, and now I have the opportunity to help impact people's lives, and especially my nieces and my nephew, who I'm helping my sister raise. It's very important for me to have that example, to be a good example. And that's one of the things that Dr. Carson highlighted on in this in his NPR speech, and that is why I selected this personal mission statement, because I do believe in hard work, faith, hustling, family, love, respect, confidence. I believe in all those things. I believe that every successful person has to have that base and have that support system. My next topic was my final Engage project for DC 100. It was an Engage project, and this topic was one that I kind of saw coming some years back, and that was about the age limit in federal law enforcement. And that's a big reason why I selected this as an artifact, because I wanted to circle back to it. And this is not for me to go, oh, I told you so, or anything like that. But the issues that we're having with hiring people in the law enforcement community, the idea of having age limits is, especially I understand having age limits for, say, 21 if you don't want someone that's 18 or 19 handling a firearm or things like that. That's understandable at the low end. Yeah, definitely not underage, certainly not. But when it comes to the max age being, 37 to 57, things like that, well, that's becoming a problem, because now you have guys maxing out, and they're not going to be, they're leaving, and we're not able to fill our ranks up fast enough. And that's why I was so anti the age limit, because you may have someone, I'll just use myself as an example, who by the time I finish school, I'll be 35, I'll be ready to turn 36 in a couple weeks after graduation. 36 means I got a year, maybe 2 max, to find a federal job, and if I can't find that job, then I'm going to have to figure out something else to do. The problem with that is that's a qualified person. Speaking third person, if I'm an HR person, that's a qualified person that is that we're missing, that the law enforcement community could be hiring, but they're not. And for me, I thought that this was an important issue to harp back on, because I could kind of see it coming some years ago, that this project, that we were going to end up with a hiring shortage, and what do you do at that point? And unfortunately, sometimes you hate it when you're right. Well, I kind of hated it that I was right, and that's a big problem that we're dealing with right now. So I thought that this was very important. I selected this artifact because I believed it was important to bring this to the public's attention, and I still feel that it's important to bring to the public's attention. This artifact right here is, one thing I'm a big believer in is showing your strengths and your weaknesses, and that it's okay to not always be perfect, and that there are times where you're gonna mess up, and you do your best, but sometimes there's some issues. This charming gentleman right there with a full beard and suit gave this persuasive speech on why revolvers have gone to the level of pretty much being extinct. And the reason why I selected this article was because, even though I am harsh, I'm my harshest critic. I'll be the first one to admit I don't feel like it's my best work. I tried my best, but I watch it now, and this is one reason why I don't usually watch my own videos, because I end up finding things that I really don't like about them, and I'm going, oh my God, how could I do that? You suck, that type of thing. But this was my persuasive speech, and I felt like it was important to go over to look at this one. I selected this as an artifact because I wanted to show that to not be afraid to get in front of a camera, and it's something that I love to do. But this was my first year in college, and this was year one, and I didn't always like to speak in front of big crowds or record myself. A very private person for the most part, and this was something completely out of what I would call my comfort zone. And so this is why I felt like I wanted to select this as an artifact, because I wanted people to know that it's okay to get out of your comfort zone, to do something, and to take a risk and take a chance. And that, papers are fine. Most of the artifacts I have here are papers. I have a few PowerPoints. I even think I have a poster card as well. But it's okay to get in front of a camera and take your shot. And that's what I wanted to show, was to be a well-rounded student, especially going to school online, where your teachers are emailing you, and you very rarely get to speak to your teacher, face to face. That type of, some teachers are in entirely different states, or entirely different counties from their students, which is fine. That's the beauty of online school. But this shows that if you're an online student, and that's why I picked this artifact. My message here is, if you're an online student, you have the opportunity to use all the tools and benefits of this beautiful thing we call a computer. Use it and have fun with it. Challenge yourself to do something different. And that was the message that I wanted to show from this. Let's get a little bit of the speech, not too long.
Oh yeah, big shootout, early 90s, and the police were still using Smith & Wesson 38 specials. 5 shots, but they didn't have the stopping power that they needed because the robbers were using semi-automatic rifles, and they were also using body armor.
Okay, so this persuasive speech was hammering down the final point about why police officers and law enforcement need to stay on the cutting edge of firearms and not get caught up also into into their comfort zone. So this entire artifact is about getting out of your comfort zone. Okay, so we're now into year 2, and this assignment is about the mindset of terrorism. And the goal here for this project is to explain why they're like the different types of terrorism. So my major is criminal justice with a minor in homeland security and terrorism. So usually I cover a lot of dark, violent topics, and it's not that I try not to be a dark, violent person, but it's the world that we live in, unfortunately. And so I felt like this was a great selection because this centered around my major and what I want to get into and what I want to do, which is serve the public and try to do some good. Because truth is, we don't live here a long time. You look at the human lifespan compared to certain trees, vegetations, certain fish in the sea, things like that. We don't live here forever. And while we're here, I feel like it's our responsibility to try to do as much good as we possibly can. And that means sometimes shedding a light on things that can be kind of dark, honestly, that sometimes people would just be more comfortable not talking about. And someone has to talk about them. Someone has to shine a light on these topics. And criminal theories and sociological and psychological theories on terrorism. This is a topic that's near and dear to me, and is one of the reasons why I selected this topic as an artifact. Also, speaking with like some of my mentors and people that are in the law enforcement community, they said that I talked to them about selecting artifacts, and they said to make sure to include things like this because because there is the opportunity to use your voice and to shine a light on things that would be seen as dark, or hey, all terrorists are the same, and we'll get more into that later on. But this artifact was selected because I felt like I wanted to shine a light on the different types of terrorism, and also kind of give you, the audience, an idea of who I am as a person and what I'm studying and why I'm studying it. And because I believe that this topic is very important, and whether people want to believe it or not, it's not going anywhere. It's not going away anytime soon. This is a new way that warfare is being waged, and it's going to be around for a very long time. And honestly, it's been around for a very long time. So why not shine a light on this topic of terrorism, and my importance, and why I feel like why it was good to select artifacts that have to do with terrorism. This is the final for that paper. This is the final paper for that class about the different types of terrorism and kind of opening up the mind. And I want to highlight this part here in the beginning. Is something I really want to talk about, was about the American when the American public thinks of terrorism, and the type of images that pop up in our heads, and what we think about, and what we're used to seeing compared to what is actual reality. And there's actually a whole lot. This is a huge topic. It's a big problem that's going on everywhere, not just here in the United States, but worldwide, and also in the United States. A lot of people try to gloss over that part. So I wanted to shine a light on how it's not just someone over from the Middle East, because that's the first thing people think about. Or it's not just a white supremacist from the middle of nowhere, from Timbuktu. That this can happen to people. This happens to people all the time. This is not something that's brand new. And this artifact, I really wanted to focus in on this artifact because it's important to look at what happens here, like what happens here and also worldwide, and why are we studying a topic like this? Why are you studying about how the ATF got into a fight, a 50-day fight that was shown on live television in Waco, Texas? Why do I summarize the Oklahoma City bombing? And this is all before September 11th, mind you. And why am I keying in on the different parties, and why are we talking about white supremacy, and why are we talking about, and then also why are we talking about the guys in the Middle East bombing the USS Cole? Because normally these are memories that people would like to lock in a box and throw away the key. But you can't do that because in order for us to make an impact and to do good and to do some good in this world, we also need to look at the bad and look, this is reality. This is what really happens, and this is what has happened. And putting our head in the sand is the easy way out. That's the easy thing to do. And if we all do that, it doesn't mean that the problem goes away. It just means that, hey, right now, we may not have to think about it. Hey, we'll let it be somebody else's problem. That's something I see with global warming all the time. People, older people go, oh, well, it's not my problem. Yeah, but it might be a problem for your grandkids or their kids. It's kind of similar with things like terrorism or things that are dark that I cover, things like human trafficking. Police reform is something that I'm a real big believer in, because those are topics that it's easy to just throw them away and try to hide them, and because they're hard and they don't always have easy solutions. So that's why I wanted to key in on the last two artifacts being on terrorism, and the first one was the mindset of terrorism, and this is closer to the public's perception of terrorism and how it needs to change in order for us to properly combat it. Another topic that I like to cover, and this is another selection for my artifacts, is the ideas of police reform. And the reason why I believe the police reform is so important is because I am pro-cop. I am very much, nowadays it's, you're anti-cop or pro-police, pro-cop. I'm very much pro-cop, but I also do believe in police reform. And I believe that we do need to have systems and checks in place to hold officers accountable when mistakes are made, and that we have to learn how to work together and live together, because as stated before with the previous two artifacts, those were selections based off of what is going on globally. And I wanted to curve, the reason why I selected this artifact was because I wanted to kind of switch it more towards, now going from a global viewpoint and zooming in on the United States and looking at the U.S. as a nation as a whole. And I felt like this was really good to use because this topic of police reform is, well, it is popular, and we've seen things like defund the police, and we've seen projects where putting more resources into social work, which is awesome. But we also still need the police. But while we do need the police and we need them, but we need them to do a good job, and most do. Most are amazing. It's just you get guys that shouldn't be there that are there, and this goes full circle back to age requirements and age limitations in law enforcement, and why, if someone, it doesn't matter their age, if they can do it and they can do it well, to let them do it, so that we don't have situations like what's happening here on the left. You know, I want to read one quote from this from this PowerPoint, and it is Dr. King: "We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools." And right now we're in a very important part of our country, and we're at this moment in time is going to be looked at in the next 50 years. Like, what did we do? Who stepped up? Who didn't? You know, things like that. And I just felt like the main reason why I selected this artifact was because I wanted to go from looking globally to looking nationally, and then eventually from going nationally to looking more locally. And you'll see that with my next artifact selection, of going from globally to nationally and now locally. This artifact here is the final artifact for year 2, and it's my DC 300 presentation. And this topic is about the homicide rates in Cleveland in 2021. So looked at a lot of local sources for this topic, and looking at locations where things were really ugly and things were really bad. Got a chance to interview awesome police officer from the suburb of Brooklyn, Ohio, which is right up the street. It's pretty much a small suburb inside the city of Cleveland. It's kind of like one of those like how East Cleveland is really close to Cleveland, or Cleveland Heights or Shaker Heights is close to Cleveland. In Akron, it'd be like how Copley is close to Akron. You know, that, if that makes sense. So got a chance to interview him, and he explained how often a homicide victim knew the suspect. And it was a great interview. Got a chance to really sit down and talk to him. This was a fun topic to cover, not because, I mean, it's dark, but it was fun to cover because it was great to get a chance to talk to people locally, talk to officers locally who could help me and sit down with me, and we could talk about different issues such as police reform, which was a topic that ended up eventually coming up off camera. You know, it was something, or off, you know, because I recorded the interview. I got some off the record discussion points about that to have to talk about, you know, at a later date and time, privately, maybe somewhere at, you know, it'd be an interesting conversation. But this was the reason why I selected this artifact, and why I felt like this was important, was because with the artifacts, I kind of wanted to paint the picture and build the story about, especially in year 2, because this was like the meat and the potatoes of my college experience. So it was to start big, right? Start real big. And then, so start on a global level, and then just start to shrink it, and then go from a global level to a national level. And now here is the crescendo, and here we're looking at how all these problems nationally that people would like to ignore, how they impact us here locally. And that's one of the reasons why, and this is a very topic I'm very passionate about, because I've had friends that have died due to gun violence. Just this year, actually, I had a friend pass away that was shot to death, unfortunately, and so this topic is very important to me about homicide rates, and seeing how the homicide rates are rising was also a huge concern for me, and I felt like this was something that a light needed to be shined on, and to try to get people talking and interviewing, local sources, and, have people actually thinking about what is going on inside the city. I felt like this was a very important topic, and it's something I'm passionate about, and that was also a major contributing factor to why I selected this artifact. Here is our first artifact from year 3, and this is my resume, and basically just kind of goes over all my work experience and why I want to get into what I can do. I currently still working for Allied Universal, and because I have security clearance, I've been subcontracted to a defense contractor down in Akron, Ohio. I also wanted to explain how, it was very important for bullet points, explain, what I do and all the different things I have done and my strengths. And this was a lot of fun to do. Got a chance to relook at this and work on this again after some years. I definitely need to get better, do a better job of keeping my resume up to date. That was something that was something that needed to be improved upon, and still needs improvement. Something that I'm working at, and this is one of the reasons why, even though it was a requirement, I was very happy to do it, because it gave me the chance to update my resume, and also to reflect on something that quite frankly I need to improve upon, and something that I will improve upon in the future. So that's why I selected. My resume is long, but that's because, in the words of Jonah Hex, I've lived a very interesting life, and I have had a lot of awesome experiences, and so this is one of the reasons why typically a normal resume is only one page. It's supposed to be one page and then a page for references. Mine ended up being 2 pages, just because there's just a lot to, that just did a lot of work in the Navy and had a lot of different jobs and wore a lot of different hats. And so that is one of the reasons why I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to use this resume for my for one of my artifacts. I'm going to talk about, not going after, I'm sorry. But the next artifact that we're going to talk about here is my year 3 learning philosophy. This was also a required document, but I'm so happy that we got a chance to talk about it and to work on our learning philosophies, because, to be honest with you, this philosophy is the philosophy I've used in my adult life, especially going into the military and doing the almost 8 years worth of service in the military that I did. Being able this learning philosophy is very similar to how, to me, is very similar to how to be successful. And it's about understanding your limitations. It's also about realizing what you can and can't do, and making decisions for your professional, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual life. And that's what I wanted to really hammer home from this topic, because yes, your life philosophies and the way you live may be different than the way that you learn, and that's completely understandable. But I would admonish anybody that, whether it's someone I've known for 20 years or someone I've known for 2 years, or no time at all, someone I just meet on the street, would be, when you make decisions and you're trying to learn something new, learn a new skill, learn how to communicate better, anything in life that you're doing, it's very important to ask the questions about, is what you're doing going to better you professionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually? And also to ask the question about, is this going to help one of those categories and then take away from 2 or 3 of those categories? Because if it is, then you really need to rethink what you're going to do. For example, when I was right before I started school, I was working out real heavy every day just because my job had me at a part-time status and I had a lot of free time. So I was lifting every day. And one of the guys at my gym offered me steroids. And the reason why I said no was because of factoring in these decisions. And yes, would it help my professional life? Sure. If I'm, instead of being 6'4", 250 with 28% body fat, being 6'4", 250 with 10% body fat, yeah, absolutely, it's going to help me professionally. Is it going to help me physically? Sure, to a certain extent, but it's going to negatively affect me physically later on in life because a lot of those guys that do steroids end up dying young. How's this going to help me mentally and emotionally and spiritually? Those are all going to be negatives. So at that point, why should I do it? It's going to help one category and it's going to take away from 3 categories, and then the other category is kind of a hit or miss. So I'm so happy that we're talking about this and that this was a required artifact. And honestly, it was going to be an artifact that I would have selected either way, because I'd love to, even though I cover a lot of dark topics, I love the opportunity to be positive and to talk about positive things and making decisions and your learning philosophies and your life philosophies, and talking about what makes us people and what makes us unique is those different phases of our life and those different parts that make us who we are. And that's why I was so happy. That's why I'm very happy that I got to select this artifact and to talk about knowledge and what the knowledge that I'm trying to acquire, is it going to better me? And honestly, this class and the school has bettered me as a person, and it's been better for my professional life, my physical life, my mental, my emotional, and my spiritual life. The artifact that was selected was on our CQ drive, our CQ analysis. It required us taking surveys and answering questions. And this is just about culturally, globally, how we would fit in with worldwide norms and things of that sort. And this was a required artifact. I don't like to brag a lot or to be arrogant. This is not the type of guy that I am. I'll be honest, I probably would not have selected this as an artifact if it wasn't required. But that's not because I didn't like the assignment, because I loved the assignment. I thought it was awesome. The reason why was because I scored really high. I scored a 95, a 75, a 91, an 85, and a 75. And those scores are great and are awesome. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was in the military and I got the chance to see the world. And I'm not like a lot of normal students, and so the scores were really high, and I'm proud of, working hard and taking the time out to interact with different people from different cultures all around the world. Is something that I'm very happy about, very proud of. But, I don't like to get too far ahead of myself, and I believe in striving and working towards always bettering yourself. So for me, the motivation is getting that 95 up to a 99, getting that 75 up to a 90, getting that 91 up to a 95, and getting that 85 up to a 95 as well. That's the goal. That's what I want to do. And so this artifact being a requirement is actually a blessing, because even though I did really well, it's going to serve as a motivator for me to continue to improve and to try to get better. So that's why I wanted to select that. Well, that's why even though I was kind of a little apprehensive at first about this being an artifact, I'm very happy that it has become an artifact that gets to be used, because it's just going to serve as motivation. I'll be honest, that 75 sticks, that one hurts. But even though those scores are really good and are considered to be in the top 25% of worldwide norms, I don't want to be in the top 25%. I want to be in the top 5%. Honestly, I want to be in the top 1%. But that's just the competitive person that I am. So I saved this artifact for last because it was the artifact of all the other artifacts that I was excited about doing, and was like I was motivated for every artifact, honestly, but this was the one artifact that I was a little apprehensive about, and that's why I saved it for last. But looking back at it, I'm so happy that it was a required artifact, because it just serves for more motivation in the future. And it's going to help me in the future, because the better I get at being able to communicate culturally worldwide, the more good I'll be able to do. So these were my 10 artifacts.